In today's video, we're taking a look at some off-season NHL rumblings concerning teams like the Montreal Canadiens, and could they possibly be using some offer sheets this coming off-season again? Who might they be targeting? Plus, we're also taking a look at a list of players from the San Jose Sharks, who may be gone and who may be back. Plus, we're looking at some options for the Red Wings as well. We'll jump into all the latest coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have three teams we're taking a look at some NHL offseason rumors concerning trades and free agency and moves they might be making. Let's start things off with the San Jose Sharks. Now, the information we're talking about today comes from a recent Athletic article from Kevin Kurz. Kurz covers the Sharks quite closely and has in-depth knowledge of the team. And these are his opinions on which players may or may not be back with San Jose. I am going to put up a graphic up here on the screen for you to follow along. This is kind of some summary points here from his recent article. Now, if you take a look at some of these players' names, first up, he looks at Melker Karlsson. Karlsson is a 29-year-old pending unrestricted free agent. I do think he's been a good fit there. He says that there is a mutual interest, according to Karlsson's agent, for them to work out a contract extension for him to stay. I had heard rumblings before that Karlsson might be good as gone just due to the salary cap constraints, but there's been a lot of talk as well that Doug Wilson might look to make a big blockbuster move this summer. He does need to shake things up. They can't take the results from this past season lightly, and if they have any intention on getting back to contending for a Stanley Cup anytime in the near future, they're going to have to make some drastic moves. At least that's my opinion. Of course, he goes on to take a look at Jumbo Joe Thornton. Will he chase a Stanley Cup elsewhere, or will he return to San Jose where he's played for so long? Generally speaking, you would think he would return to San Jose, but based on the fact that he seemed so disappointed that he was not traded at the deadline, leads me to think that he was really looking forward to having a chance to chase the Stanley Cup, and if that meant leaving San Jose, that he had accepted that and come to grips with it and was ready to do so if it meant fulfilling his lifelong dream of being a Stanley Cup champion. You can't help but wonder what's going to happen here. Personally, I think, in Joe Thornton's case, I think that there's a possibility he stays, and I do think there's a possibility he goes. But I think what we're going to see with Thornton, like we've seen in other years recently, where he keeps doing these short one-year contracts, I think he's going to see what other moves the Sharks are going to make. Thornton's 41 years old. He does not need to rush. He'll probably be a last-minute signing as the training camps for 2020-21 season are getting closer to getting underway. At least that would be my guess. Obviously, he's going to look for opportunities and see what's out there. And if he feels that Doug Wilson's made enough moves to make this Sharks team a contender, or feels like he can be in the playoffs at least, then I think he'll sign a contract and stay. But if he's not thinking that the Sharks are going to be able to get to that point, then I would not be surprised to see him entertain offers from other franchises. But a lot of that also depends on what else is out there. I mean, at the NHL trade deadline, there seemed to be, really limited interest in Jumbo Joe Thornton. Obviously, he's had a terrific career. He's had one of the most successful careers of players who have not won the Stanley Cup. He's played a lot of games, put up a lot of points, but he also has had a lot of injuries. He's getting up there in years, and there just wasn't a ton of interest based on the teams that were going for the Cup. They just did not really need what he would be able to bring to their lineup. So I guess it's difficult to say, but so personally, I'm going to give it a 50-50 shot that Thornton returns, and it mostly depends on what other moves the team makes and how he feels about it getting closer to camp. Now, we mentioned Stefan Noesen, who's also a pending free agent. He feels he'll get extended for 1 or 2 years. Stefan Noesen was a late season addition by the Sharks, and he can be a versatile player, typically a bottom six guy. He's bounced around the NHL a little bit, but still he can be a guy, even if it's a two-way deal, he can play in between up and down between the AHL, NHL, or be a decent bottom six guy. I think he's worth keeping around for the right price. He's another player that could probably sign close to the league minimum and keep him in the fold. Now, the part that I found most interesting when he's referred to defenseman Tim Heed, he says the only way he sees Heed coming back is if they make room by trading Brent Burns, which he would not rule out. Now, I've talked on a couple of occasions about a Brent Burns potential trade out of San Jose when we hit this offseason. I mean, technically the Sharks are done now, so it could happen anytime. But of course, right now they're limited to trading only with the 7 teams that their season is complete. So I don't see that happening. I think more likely would be maybe at the draft or once the free agency period kicks in when they're actually, the full season is done, which is difficult to say when that's going to be, probably October at this point. But either way, Brent Burns, though, the one thing that's going to complicate a potential Burns trade is that he has a modified no trade and he gets to submit a 3-team trade list. So that does not give Doug Wilson a lot of room to make a move without getting Burns' consent. Now, of course, Burns has to submit a list of 3 teams every year, how this contract works according to Cap Friendly. And of course, if he makes a deal with one of those teams, then it's already been authorized by Burns to make it happen. And any other teams, he would have to waive that clause to agree to the trade. Now, of course, Burns has been with the Sharks, I think it's 9 or 10 years now. He's been there a long time. I'm sure he probably doesn't want to leave, but at the same time, he's 35 years old. I'm sure he'd also, like Thornton, would love an opportunity at the Stanley Cup. And if depending on how they're feeling with the team, maybe he would accept a trade. I would imagine he'd look at it and say, well, how does this impact my family? How does this impact me winning a chance at the Stanley Cup? And kind of go from there. He's got a lot of term left on his contract with a fair bit of money as well. So obviously a team making an acquisition is going to have some flexibility with the salary cap. There's not a lot of teams who can take that on. Maybe the Sharks would retain. Hard to say, but I personally think if you look around their roster and you look at what moves they could make if they really want to, take a core member of their current team and really shake things up, who would make the most sense to trade? If you look at the blue line, can't see it being Erik Karlsson. Just signed an 8-year contract. Hasn't been there very long. They gave out a lot of assets to get him from Ottawa. They're not going to come close to recouping that at this point. They got Marc-Edouard Vlasic, who's got a lot of term left at $7 million. Yeah, you know what? It might make more sense to keep Burns, trade Vlasic, maybe. But you know what? They're not going to get the return like they would on a Brent Burns deal. If you look up front, you got guys like Thomas Hertl, Timo Meier, Logan Couture. Just not sure that that's really the answer. They're all younger and have good contracts, whereas Burns is making more money. He's a little bit older. Might make things more complicated too, mind you. But I think out of all of them, it might make the most sense to get a good return, shed some salary, change things up. I know Burns is a big part of that team, but it's hard to say what to do if you're Doug Wilson. So my question to you that I'd love to see some comments on so we can discuss further is what teams would be most likely able to acquire Brent Burns? Give me some mock trades down below in the comments. Where do you see him going? What kind of return can Doug Wilson get? And we can discuss further. Of course, he also mentions here Aaron Dell and says that likely he's gone too unless Martin Jones is moved. Of course, Martin Jones likely isn't going to get moved. That's going to be an even more difficult contract to move. Obviously, in Burns' case, at least he's been putting up some good numbers and been playing well, whereas in Jones' case, he hasn't played well, has term and a lot of money on a contract. Going to be, pretty much impossible. I mean, not to say that anything's impossible nowadays, but just hard to see it happening. And I see more likely that Aaron Dell leaves via free agency and they try to bring in another goalie either via free agency or trade who can hopefully compete with Jones. And, even though he's still making a lot of money, hopefully eventually kind of relegate Jones to be the backup or, challenge him enough that maybe we see some improved play and he can get back to where he used to be. But I do think there's a really high chance Aaron Dell has played his last game as a Shark as well. Also talks about defenseman Brandon Davidson, maybe a two-way deal, but really he's bounced around so much. But the problem is that the Sharks are going to need some defensemen on cheap contracts. There's just no way around that. They have a lot of money tied up, as we mentioned. If Burns doesn't get traded, between Burns, Karlsson, and Vlasic, that's a lot of money and a lot of minutes taken up. They're going to need a few other guys to fill some spots. I mean, they got Ferraro back there, who's looked pretty good. Maybe Davidson could be a third pair guy on a cheap contract. Maybe, like I said, maybe he has to accept a two-way deal so that if he ends up being a number 7-8 defenseman on that team, that he may have to spend some time in the minors depending on the injury and health situation of the blue line. But either way, not a big priority for Doug Wilson. Also mentions Dalton Prout and the fact that he's likely gone. Barely played last year, handful of games between the NHL and AHL due to multiple concussion issues. I'm not sure he'll return to the Sharks, or it's hard to say if he gets a contract anywhere in the NHL, but if he does, likely not going to be in San Jose. Now, I also want to reference an article talking about the Detroit Red Wings, and actually the main focus of this article is goaltender Jimmy Howard and whether or not he'll be back in Detroit or whether or not he's going to continue playing or how his career is going to go. Now, in this article, and I'll give you a few quotes here on the screen as we talk through this, Jimmy Howard makes it clear that he fully intends to want to keep playing. He still feels he can play for another couple of years, and he realizes, though, that it may not necessarily be able to stay in Detroit. Now, of course, he'd love to finish his career out there, but at the same time, he says he's talked to his wife and his family, and they've come to the grips with the fact that they may have to be prepared to be able to move on if he's going to continue playing. Obviously, understands the business side of the game. I found it interesting, though, that he'd be willing to put out a statement this early indicating his desire to keep playing, and not only that he wants to play, but for multiple years at that. Of course, we saw the same thing from another aging goaltender who has struggled recently, and Henrik Lundqvist of the New York Rangers make a similar statement in the past week or so, saying that not only does he want to play still, but he wants to play for multiple years. So we could see some aging goaltenders like them move around to other teams if they're able to get contracts, if they're able to keep playing. Clearly, Jimmy Howard had the worst year of his career last year. It was a long time since he's won a hockey game. I know he can be better than that, but at the same time, the team in front of him wasn't very good. And, at the same time, like I said, he's had a pretty good career. To see another team take a chance on what he can bring. I mean, at best, he'd be a backup at this point in his career. And last year was so bad. Could he really get a chance? And can't completely rule it out. He does have a long history of, being a relatively successful goalie in the NHL. So it's not like he has completely forgotten how to play. But as time goes on, it is challenging to keep up with your skill level. Your body breaks down. There's a lot of things that happen to you as you age. And unfortunately, a lot of that's out of his control. So I guess we can't completely rule out the fact that Jimmy Howard might still keep playing, but I do think it's highly unlikely he returns in Detroit. I know I've seen comments from Steve Yzerman saying that they needed to find a goaltender as well. They do have Jonathan Bernier under contract still. Not sure he's really the starter, but if he can find somebody who can kind of platoon with him and challenge each other, that might be the best case scenario. But based on other comments from Steve Yzerman, I'm not sure that Detroit's really focusing too hard on really improving a whole lot next year. I think that they're looking at another year of development, probably naming a captain, like he said, getting this core group of players, like guys like Bertuzzi and Mantha signed to longer-term deals, get probably the C on Larkin's jersey, and continue going. Of course, they're going to have a high pick in the draft. Hard to say who that turns out to be, depending on how their luck goes in the lottery. They have some other kids that are coming up in the system, like Foligno and Sider and Zadina. Get them some more experience. So I don't really think that they're going to be focused too hard on really taking some major steps next year. I think we're probably going to see Detroit not really, focus too hard on spending a lot of money on goaltenders. Obviously, somebody's going to be there, but they're basically going to be a placeholder. They're probably not going to win a lot of games. Probably going to get another high pick next year and continue developing that way. But more likely, I think if Jimmy Howard continues playing, it's going to have to be somewhere else. Another article I want to reference here from The Athletic talking about some potential offseason moves by Montreal. It's a mailbag type of article. Would Marc Bergevin once again hollow the offer sheet? And could he go after guys like Pierre-Luc Dubois of the Columbus Blue Jackets or Mikhail Sergachev of the Tampa Bay Lightning? And the other question here is if that doesn't work, or could they consider going through free agency, maybe targeting a defenseman like Torrey Krug if he becomes a UFA and does not sign an extension with the Boston Bruins. Now, in the article here, the author Arpon Basu references the fact that he doesn't think Columbus will really do anything to give up Pierre-Luc Dubois. I mean, we saw a mass exodus of players from Columbus last year during free agency. They were still a pretty decent team this past year. They're going to have a chance to compete in this 2014 playoff round, see what they can do, see if they can make some noise. They got exceptional performance out of their young goalies who didn't have a ton of experience, especially as starters. That took them a long ways. But given the other talent that has left town and they've already lost, I really don't see Dubois being traded or being a victim of an offer sheet. Columbus has a lot of salary cap flexibility. They can overpay if they need to keep him. They can do anything to match a potential offer sheet for him. And I really don't see Dubois leaving town, as what the article references as well, that he doesn't see Columbus really being afraid of an offer sheet and doesn't see him going anywhere, even though he could be that big center iceman that would be a huge help for Montreal and could really be what they're looking for. I just don't see how they could do it without making a trade offer, make Columbus an offer that they couldn't refuse. But that, to me, just would not really make sense given where everything's at with the franchise, where they do have a lot of interesting center prospects themselves. Just a matter of helping them develop and getting to the point where they might be able to be that top player for them. And, of course, in Mikhail Sergachev's case, the article also references the fact that they felt that Tampa Bay likely is not going to give up very easily on this player. They very well would be more likely than Dubois to be a victim of an offer sheet in this scenario because they don't have the cap flexibility like the Jackets do, but Tampa is likely going to want to do everything in their power to keep this young up-and-coming defenseman. He's really developed a lot, come a long way, and I just don't see how Tampa would not be willing to move out other salary to keep him. They also have to sign Anthony Cirelli, but I think it's more than clear here that Tampa is likely going to do everything they can to make some trades to find some salary cap space to get them signed and longer-term deals like that to get them to be a big part of the team's future. Now, I will stress this, though. One part of this that could be successful, whether it be Montreal or otherwise, to get either of these players out of town in Tampa, is that Tampa has given their players, in my opinion at least, way too many no trade or modified no trade clauses, and there's a lot of guys there that will become difficult to move because they will need their permission to make that happen, or they have a limited number of teams they can deal with. The guys like Tyler Johnson, Alex Killorn, Andre Palat, they're probably the most likely in the forward group, and they've all got something in their contract that could prove difficult for them to move. I mean, Yanni Gourde's another one. They may have to move some players that they probably don't want to because of the lack of trade protection in some of the contracts. But the most likely trade targets are also going to be the most complicated, and depending on the scenarios that arise, Tampa might have a very difficult choice to make in that regard. But I think Montreal would have to overpay drastically for them to be successful in getting Sergachev, which means they're going to give up a lot of compensation to do that. And as much as he's a great young defenseman, you can't help but question, is it really worth it when they can go a different route? Like I mentioned before in a video a few days ago, they likely could talk to a team like Philadelphia for a Shane Gostisbehere trade. Now, I know they're not the same kind of defenseman, but for what they'd have to give up and the contract that would come with it, might make more sense to roll the dice that Gostisbehere could even come close to being just as good longer term, which may not be likely, but still, it's a lot lower price to pay, lower risk. And it said in the fallback option in this article would be, should they target Torrey Krug? And again, the author references the fact that Boston's probably going to do everything they can to sign this player. And as much as we probably would all agree, the fact that Montreal needs a defenseman on the left side, somebody who's a good skater, can move the puck, probably even play with Shea Weber as the top pair. Krug would be exactly the definition of that player. I mean, they might want a defenseman with a little bit more size because they already have a lot of smaller players on the team, but regardless of that, he's a great skater, great puck mover, really strong offensively. He really would be a major help to their blue line and to their team. Would be exactly what they're looking for on that left side for the most part. But like I said, it would be weird to see him jumping uniforms between the Bruins to the Habs, and I think the Bruins are going to do everything they can to sign him. And even if he does leave Boston by chance by free agency, I'm not sure Montreal will be high up on his list. At this point, we don't have any information to suggest that Krug would be really seriously interested in going to Montreal anyway, but as we know, money talks and opportunity talks as well, and if he has to leave Boston, he's going to have to look at what the best options are out there for him. And maybe Marc Bergevin might be able to present one of those to make it intriguing for him to consider jumping longtime rival. So let me know your thoughts on all this down below. Is Montreal going to haul up the offer sheet again this coming offseason? Will Marc Bergevin stand a better chance of being successful? And if so, who do you think he most likely targets? And what would he have to offer to make it work? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and we'll continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.